welcome back to the Citizen channel. You're all staying safe and well, and it's another City Book Club. Yes, today we're going to have a look at a book by Ashley Shaw. You may have it, you may not have it, but an interesting read, Cups for Cock-Ups, which is some City Up, didn't it, quite a while ago. So we're going to have a look and read a little excerpt from this today, guys. It is easily available from various sources, incredibly cheap now, of course, many years later. I'm going to read an excerpt from chapter 2, which is simply entitled Swales Out. Yes, so we're going to have a look at this this one. One of my, obviously, I'll say one of my heroes, not back in the day, but there's a few stories about him. But we'll have a look what's said in this book anyway. Please, if you are new to the channel, push that subscribe button, push the bell notifications, everything City past. Even the horrible things, and City present, of course, all the good things, as I'm recording this, a lot better than it was in those days. But hey, we're still there supporting the club. Please push those buttons. And if you do check through the channel, see stuff on film and TV as well. Another passion of mine. Yeah, Mr. Swales used to rent TVs, didn't he? I think back in the day, but nothing to do with him then. I did cross his path once or twice in the 80s, but less said about that the better. We're talking about this book today. So anyway, check out my film and TV stuff, or if you're interested in that side of it as well. And we do have memberships for the Citizen channel now and the film and TV channel, so 99p a month. If you're interested, guys, you get copies of scripts of all my history stuff, a lot of vlogs that have not been published yet. Take months, even over a year sometimes before I publish some of these. I mean, I'm recording this well before it's going to get published, this little book club thing. So get access to everything. As soon as I've recorded it, so you can sort of pick and choose as and when you want. So if you can join me on a membership, that will support the channel and support me, and much appreciated. And if you are interested in sponsoring the channel as well, we do have sponsors. Just check my socials later on before we go. I'll put them on screen, and we can have a chat about that as well. But if you want to support him, just give me a like. That'll do, guys. Just give us a like for this, and let us know your memories, of course, of Mr. Swales, obviously no longer with us, a long time ago. Right, let's start this chapter 2. Tracing the roots of Manchester City's decline is easy if you ask the right people, in a nutshell. I'll add any comments I can make as well, any sort of memories I stumble across. I've not read this little while, so I might have something I'll remember. Anyway, in a nutshell, Peter Swales remains a major cause of the grief and embarrassment which has earned Main Road the unenviable nickname the Theatre of Comedy. Even now, nearly 5 years after the termination of his Main Road reign, and over 2 years since his death, obviously when this book was written, his vaudevillian personality haunts the club, and despite a facelift under Francis Lee, the Blues are still frequented by Swales appointees from board members to the Tea Lady. When Swales took over on Friday the 5th of October 1973, City were the team to beat in Manchester. After Leeds and Liverpool, they were perhaps the most consistent club in the country, regularly playing to home audiences of over 40,000. Regularly finishing in the top 5 and accustomed to making regular assaults on Europe. The Championship had been secured in '68, the FA Cup a year later. Then in 1970, the Super Blues did a double of sorts, winning both the League and European Cup winners' trophies. Well, it is a double, I mean of sorts, under the guidance of Joe Mercer and Malcolm Allison. Yes, it's not the recognised double, of course, no. Regular tilts at the league followed. In 1972, City were odds on to land the Championship but failed. The blame was laid squarely at the door of then manager Malcolm Allison, who had brought the unreliable but occasionally brilliant striker Rodney Marsh. Well, we've all got views on that one. Not the ideal signing during a tense Championship running. It was a season later, against a background of boardroom discontent, that Swales stepped into the fold. Yes, more a gentleman called Gordon Banks probably cost us that league title last season, but let's say that's another story. By 1971, word had reached Swales that the board was short of funds and the directors short of direction. In fact, they were split over the future of Mercer's assistant Malcolm Allison, an ambitious figure who wanted the manager's job for himself. Swales offered his services, and before long he was greeted like a white knight charging to the rescue. I remember Francis Lee's group, and obviously I think it was the Daily Express or the Daily Mirror had a knight on a white horse, and in the guise of Francis Lee. You could imagine it with Peter Swales then. His Main Road reign lasted 20 seasons. In that time, it was estimated they had spent £25 million on over 100 players, appointed 12 managers, but won only one honour, of course, the 1976 League Cup. More than all this, perhaps, he became the personification of Manchester City. His business background was a tale of pulling oneself up from the bootstraps. He began by selling televisions in an era when the box was seen as a luxury. After making a tidy sum, he moved into the football business in 1961, funding Altringham's rise up the ranks of amateur, where I live now, Altrincham, amateur and then semi-professional football with his business partner Noel White, who went on to become chairman of Liverpool. His move into high-powered world of First Division football swiftly followed, but his arrogant and complacent nature also summed up the Blues' fall from grace. By 1993, the long-time chairman had lost his competitive edge, and like City, appeared to be happy accepting second best, with the result the club yo-yoed between the top two divisions. But still, Swales seemed safe, there being no credible alternative to his comfortable tenure as City Supremo. The Swales eventually resigned in November 1993 was due to a frenetic campaign led by one of Main Road old boys. He had antagonised Francis Lee. Lee was a working class hero as a player. He threatened to go on strike at Bolton in 1966 because they refused to allow him to talk to any other club. Wanderers only gave in when their star striker, acquired as a teenager, still on a paltry wage, refused to attend training or play for the club. It's been done a few times since then, hasn't it? Lee, talking about that incident in 1969, recalled, "I joined my local team Bolton at 16 and my first game was against City of all teams, but when the club lost the services of Nat Lofthouse, the team began to go downhill with too many young players. We were nearly always struggling. So when a couple of moves to Stoke and Wolves broke down, I demanded my cards from the Bolton manager, Bill Redding. He eventually sent them on to me in the post. I was out of football for 2 weeks, but I would have held out for as long as it took because I had my business interests to keep me busy. When City stepped in for me, I went on to play for England. It was all worth the years of struggle and disappointment at Bolton." Lee was at the vanguard of football's modern professional era. He benefited from the abolition of the maximum wage by running a few lucrative businesses on the side. He was one of the number of players at the time who knew they had sporting careers that would be short and full of idle hours after training. So as his career on the pitch flourished with City in England, his business expanded and became more successful. Yes, the old picture of him sat on a big pile of bog rolls, you remember that one. But the manner of his 1974 departure from City seemed instrumental in determining what he would do after football. There had been a rumour that he had been demanded too much money from the new board headed by Swales. The two were on a collision course, and at the time at Main Road there was only ever going to be one winner. So Lee left for Derby County, returning with the Rams the following season to score one of the most spectacular goals ever seen at Main Road. Yes, just look at his face. Tellingly, that fantastic strike drew as much applause from the Kippax as it did from Derby's travelling support that day. Swales had spurned Lee, and it was a move in which in short term would be to his benefit. Lee was one of the big names at the club, a reminder of the championship winning team and a hero to many of the younger players, someone therefore who Swales regarded as a threat. Lee went on to play out his career with Derby, winning another championship medal before concentrating on his waste paper business and racehorse training. Yeah, I did meet Francis Lee a couple of races. I was doing a lot of race meetings when Lee was a trainer a couple of times. Mike Shannon as well. A far cry from the usual option of running a pub or the bookies that retired footballers typically contemplated, all of which made him an attractive potential investor for City fans during the lean years that would follow. But Lee never gave the impression of being a City fan himself. When he walked away from football, he didn't reappear as a pundit on TV or radio. He didn't become a Main Road regular like so many other players from that era. Indeed, between 1975 and 1989, he never put in an appearance at the ground. He left football for good, and until his renewed interest following a few of Swales' more harebrained decisions, it appeared that he didn't much miss football. He had merely been one high-profile success in a successful-filled working life. However, the battle lines between Lee and Swales had been drawn. It became clear that the two men who would shape the future of City appeared to be on a collision course, one that would lead to a high-profile battle for the club 20 years later. Looking back on the 70s, City fans got a twinge for the time and place. They recognised the fact that City regularly drubbed United, regularly finished above them in the league. Indeed, for one glory season, they stood a full league higher than the Reds, thanks to Dennis Law's infamous back heel, which condemned United to a season in the second division, which I missed because it was outside the ground because it was all kicking off. Never mind. And that with the completion of the all-season North Stand, they had a stadium to rank alongside any in the country. City had used for the silver polish then great players like Marsh, Bell, Barnes, Stewart, Grace Main Road. They played fantastic football and even missed out on a couple of championships through their cavalier style. The club could not have been in better health when Swales took over the reins, but instead of taking City on to further glory, the new chairman, who admitted that being City chairman was the greatest job in the world, allowed the club to rest on its laurels. City were financially sound during this period, but Swales' growing obsession with putting one over United led to a number of make or break decisions that would eventually leave the club in financial peril. Swales admitted later that 1977 was a crucial season. By then we had been runners-up to Liverpool by a point and were about level on attendance with United. And the following season, instead of winning the championship, we finished fourth. So that was how we got taught into my biggest mistake, Malcolm Allison. One or two on the board said, if we get Malcolm, we give it the final push, all right. Allison's returned 10 years after he had helped Joe Mercer to turn City into one of English football's powerhouse clubs was to leave the club in dire financial straits. Swales, to his credit, gave Allison all the funds he could, but by selling experienced players like Owen, Hartford, Kidd, Shannon and replacing them with the expensive signings like $250,000 Steve McKenzie, $1 million man Kevin Reeves and staggering $1.4 million paid for Wolves midfielder Steve Daly, Swales took a huge gamble on Allison with being the genius manager he claimed he was. Main Road descended into transfer madness during this period. For example, the story goes that City broke the club's transfer record to sign Wolves midfielder Steve Daly after a misunderstanding between Allison and Swales. Apparently Allison was on holiday and agreed to a fee of $650,000 with the Wolves chairman John Barnwell. Allison later claimed that the eventual transfer fee of $1.4 million was negotiated by Swales alone. The player ended up making only a handful of appearances and was one of many signings that saw the beginning of the end of blue prosperity. Thanks to Swales' financial support of Allison, City were the first club to sign 3 £1 million players, but the fact remains that only Kevin Reeves stayed at the club for longer than 18 months, living high on the hog in this way. Swales had clearly hoped to keep rivals United off the back pages for a couple of years, and while he admits that his judgment was impaired by the Allison style, the blame cannot be totally laid at the manager's door. It was clearly Swales' intention to outdo United at every turn. Nevertheless, Allison's 22-month reign did more damage to City's finances than perhaps any other period in the club's history. When John Bond replaced Allison in October 1980, City soon reached the FA Cup final of 81, only to lose to Ricky Villa's silky solo effort. Perhaps the finest goal ever scored at Wembley, behave. In 1982, they topped the league at Christmas, but by the summer of 83, they were relegated, managerless and, according to Swales, penniless. The debts built up under Swales' middle bust policy, leaving the club facing a £4 million debt and interest payments estimated at £1,000 a day. The steady decline had been played out in front of Swales and his cronies in the boardroom. A Grada documentary on Malcolm Allison's return to Main Road as manager of Crystal Palace shows Swales' seat of power in all its glory. It's a cracking, brilliant documentary. I'm sure you've seen it, the City documentary, but brilliant stuff. Then on the fake oak panel, well, I thought it was real. I've been in that boardroom. I thought it was real oak. Fake oak panel wall hung photographs of the players Swales admired and the teams he had helped put together. Bob Greaves, Granada's intrepid reporter, most famous for having his private snuffled by a baby elephant at Chester Zoo. A bit unkind. A bit more famous for other things. Was quizzing the opposing managers after City had beaten two-time City manager Malcolm Allison's Crystal Palace 3-1 in the FA Cup third round. Was it 3-1? I thought it'd be 4-0. I might be wrong. Bond and Allison's successive managers at Main Road were both in the Carnegie Hall mould. The rent-a-quit manager had his heyday in the 70s when self-indulgent giants of the game like the Dock, Cloughy, Shankly, Allison livened up the history of the game with a succession of apocryphal stories on football and its characters. Their meeting was tense. Bond claimed not to be intimidated by Malcolm. Malcolm sat there brooding over the cup defeat. Bond recalled their days in the oft-fabled West Ham Academy when Allison would regularly humiliate the apprentices. Bond claimed he was scared then, but not now. Throughout, Swales sat there silently listening to his last manager and his present manager talking football and grinning like a Cheshire cat. You sense that Allison wanted to lay down the law to Swales and his cronies, but with the TV crew watching, he bit his lip. Swales ended by claiming that City had turned the corner, and he had a point. Only this twist in City's history would not be positive. They would soon embark on a cycle of relegation and promotion that would hit attendances and eventually threaten not just their supremacy over United, but their standing as the second-ranked club in Manchester. Between 1981 and 1993, football would change, but Swales would struggle to keep up. The main reason for City's struggle throughout the 80s was a huge debt left over from Allison's reign, and it wasn't until Stephen Bowler and Brewers Greenall sunk £10 million into the club that City were able to see some light at the end of the tunnel. There you go, guys. We'll finish it there. A great book, and of course, younger watchers just want to know your history about City. These sort of things need to be read, and it's just amazing. City's history is, don't let anyone tell you it isn't glorious in parts, but it's also interesting, and that's what makes history. It's not all about trophies, which obviously we're counting up the trophies now. We're doing very well, thank you very much. But history's not just trophies. It's just the club, what goes on with the club, and this. You wouldn't say it's a rich history, this part in our history, but it's certainly incredibly interesting, and certainly more interesting than the vast majority of football clubs that are on this planet. And I'm proud to do little history vlogs as well. There you go, guys. If you are interested in sponsoring the channel, absolutely wonderful. Get in touch with me. The social will be on screen there. As I said, if you want to join the membership, it would help me out going forward. Just 99p a month, access to everything I do, and obviously includes film and TV stuff as well straight away. So it'd be great to have your support. And if it's just a like, guys, just give us a like. That's absolutely fantastic. Until we meet again, I want to ask one thing, don't please. Stay safe, everyone, especially you Blues. And simply, come on, City. Bye for now.